Hello Guardians, Eido here. The Solstice armor set for the Titans have some interesting details from the Elixni regarding their interactions and observations of the citizens of the tower. The current refugee situation in the last city is one of the only recorded times in history of humanity putting up with the Elixni, not to mention cooperating and sharing with them. As shown in my last video about traditional Elixni stories, this is a prime opportunity for us to learn about them. However, today I'll show a few examples of them learning about us. All of these are recovered from the lore of the 2021 Solstice Titan armor set, and are presumably recorded by Eido, the scribe of House Light, regarding the observations of humans. First is an observation of individual ownership.
Today, another misunderstanding resulted in conflict. Clyfix, a young engineer, was tasked with repairing our shank. The machine was damaged during the escape from Europa, and we needed her advanced diagnostic capabilities. Clyfix repaired what he could, and then set about searching for replacement parts. He identified a pile of scrap that served our purpose, and started fashioning the needed parts. While Clyfix was working, a human emerged from a nearby dwelling and began shouting at him. Clyfix didn't understand the man's words, but he understood the angry tone, so he took the needed scrap and fled. As it so happened, Clyfix took scrap pieces that were the parts to a vintage sparrow that the man was intending to rebuild. Clyfix never considered such a thing, because on a catch, scrap is a shared resource. The idea of hoarding scrap for some imagined purpose is strange indeed to the Elixni, the spider notwithstanding. Luckily, Clyfix told me his tale, and I worked with Ikora to repay the man. Crisis was averted, and Clyfix learned an important lesson. To humans, control over a thing is often more valuable than the thing itself.
This shows a very interesting concept of ownership. In post-Whirlwind Elixni culture, any object was valuable. Things should never go to waste, and the concept of owning something only for yourself did nothing to strengthen a group in a catch. Anything that you hoarded was something that no one else could use, so ownership was a lot more communal. But on the flip side, we can see why the man was offended in this tale. It wasn't the value of the scrap, it was the principle. After all, it was scrap befitting a simple shank. While the sparrow was one of a kind, the metal that was going into it was rudimentary. But the thought that someone would take anything from him was what was truly offensive, because of the social construct of ownership. Next, Eido observes humanity's habits when it comes to celebration, and more specifically, intoxication.
Today, I witnessed a human ritual that I long thought a myth, or at least over-researched relative to its cultural impact. That is, the ingestion of ethanol to induce euphoria and knowingly hinder judgment. When I first learned of this practice in the Techian's data archives, it seemed preposterous. Why would a predominantly aqueous culture willingly ingest a substance that causes its body to purge liquid? What was its goal? Today I discovered the answer. Partying. Based on my observations near community ethanol distribution centers, partying is a distinctly human form of enjoyment. It is similar to many Elixni celebrations, a social gathering meant to foster group cohesion, but the human version involves collective self-poisoning, for which there is no parallel in Elixni society. Apparently, partying involves a loose constellation of behaviors, speaking much more loudly than normal, making an increased amount of bodily contact, the purging of partially digested food, walking in eccentric patterns, expressions of fondness, increased laughter, public displays of sorrow, and coordinated yelling to previously recorded sounds. Having witnessed the prevalence of ethanol consumption in the last city, I can safely conclude that, if anything, the behavior is under-researched. Humans' fondness for poisoning themselves is prolific. It's a wonder their species has lasted this long. I admit to curiosity as to the perceived effects of ethanol consumption. because it cannot feel as terrible as it looks. However, I am reluctant to engage in human partying, because I'm not sure an Elixni could survive it.
I think this shows the perfect outsider's view on salibration. Alcohol is technically poison to the human body, but people still partake in its consumption for a variety of reasons. Drinking for fun, stress relief, or social contract. But to these Elixni, the effects of its consumption are seen as extreme, and in some cases deadly. This next record is perhaps my favorite, however.
Today, I viewed the Crucible through a feed spliced by one of Misraxkel's apprentices. It was a shocking and horrifying experience. A record of that feed can be found in the addendum of this report. I had seen the Crucible referenced in the records of the Cryptarchs, who had been most welcome and eager to exchange data. Historically, the Crucible was a trial by combat, similar to the Cabal Rite of Proving. It was a neutral ground for parties to engage in violence without civilian casualties. However, over centuries it evolved into a blood sport, practiced for combat experience, commerce, and enjoyment. However, no amount of study could prepare one for the depravity of the actual event. Humans immolate each other, melting flesh beneath unpenetrated armor. They drive swords through each other's faces, reveling in the creation of deformity. They unleash bursts of void and darkness, consuming each other's bodies with anti-life. The amount of precious ammunition that goes wasted in every match would be punishable by docking in some Elixni houses. After the arbitrary conditions for victory have been met, the messengers of the Great Machine emerge. They resurrect the dead, who then sulk off the fields as if eternal life were nothing compared to the loss of a sporting match. And then, the whole practice begins again. The experience has made me wary of our new hosts. They are much more like the Cabal than I had imagined. Humans clearly have the capacity for peace, but they seem to prefer violence. And as long as the Great Machine blesses them, violence will be their way.
It's interesting to see such a call-out for Crucible. Eido calls it a blood sport, and this is true. But I think the immorality of the situation is to be contested. Previous blood sports, like the idea of the Roman Colosseum, are terrible to think about because of the injustice in their systems and the irreversible killing that went on. However, in the Crucible for Guardians, death is far from permanent. No one actually loses their life, nor is there any political backdrop or agenda to the matches. This is where my defense of the Crucible ends, however. There's a reason it's called worshipping the light and the traveler. The concept of devotion to the light is essentially a religion, and it is referred to and alluded to as being such multiple times throughout the Destiny lore. Each time a Guardian conjures the light into arc, solar, or void energy, each time they're brought back from death through resurrection by their ghost, they're experiencing and shaping miracles. Literal miracles from their figures of worship, being used recreationally. The concept of these live fire exercises seems perfectly fine on paper. It hardens Guardians for battle and gives them experience. However, it very quickly grew from being a simple exercise to being an informal sport to the citizens of the last city. Viewers of the Crucible have fan-favorite Guardians that they enjoy watching. Matches are recorded and logged, not only for study, but for public broadcast and entertainment, in what must be some sort of ESPN-type channel. Watching these Crucible feeds is the most popular pastime in the city, at least based on the random chatter you hear sometimes while walking around the tower. People constantly speak about that hunter in the feed last night, or the feed cut out just as Shax was going to announce the winner. It seems a little much. Like we may be downplaying just how important and powerful each miracle is, trivializing them to a game. Elixni only die once. Guardians die 12 times during a single 5-minute match. Eido, and perhaps the House of Light as a whole, are definitely as fascinated with humanity as we are of them, if not more. We're both very confusing species, and it's interesting to see their ideas and opinions about us. So thank you for joining me today. My statistics tell me that about 90% of you watching aren't subscribed yet, so remember to subscribe if you haven't already. The best way to let me know you enjoy my content is to leave a like on the video or comment down below. Thank you so much, and I'll see you in the next video.